Mr. President, I want to join my colleague, Senator Thune, in talking now about the Defense Authorization Act, the bill that's before the committee right now, before the House right now, rather, the Senate. The preamble to the Constitution says that one of the purposes of the founding of the government was to provide for the common defense. I believe that the number one priority of the federal government is to do that job. Lots of arguments about what level of government can better do lots of other things, but I don't hear many arguments about what the job of defending the country is all about or who has to do that job. When we send our troops into harm's way, it's our job to ensure that they have the tools they need, that they have the resources they need to carry out their mission. That's what Chairman McCain has done in this authorization bill before the Senate today. Senate passage of the bill would mark the 56th year in a row that the Congress has passed the National Defense Authorization Act. Should give you some indication of how serious that job is. There are very few things that the Congress manages to do every year. The authorization of how we do what we do, the bill that provides or at least authorizes the necessary funding, this authorization bill, it provides the authorities that the military needs to defend the nation are in this bill. The world is a rapidly changing place. Our responsibility to defend freedom in that world and the freedom of Americans is something that every year needs to be carefully looked at and recalculated and recalibrated, and that's what Chairman McCain and his committee have done with this bill. I support the bill. I want to talk about some of the key provisions in the bill. First of all, Senator Thune just mentioned a pay raise for our troops, 2.1%, a pay raise that they rightfully deserve, a pay raise that because of the demands on the military today, and I'm going to talk about that a little later, the time spent, what we expect of our military to do with less resources and fewer people, we expect them to do a bigger job. A 2.1% pay raise is a pay raise that's richly deserved by those who defend us. The bill enhances the capability of our defense forces, the military, to defeat ISIS, to defeat Al-Qaeda, to defeat enemies that even though this is 16 years after 9/11, these are enemies that we still have a hard time fully understanding. The emerging threat of these enemies, the non-traditional threat, the non-traditional combatant, all are things that we need to continue to look at carefully, to adjust to understand their prowess on social media and other places, to understand what can happen there. This focuses on terrorism. This bill on cyber warfare, on the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and their means of delivery. By the way, on cyber, the Missouri National Guard has one of the leading cyber defense units anywhere in the country. And as I've said about this program before, this is a place where the reserves and National Guard can particularly do a great job because they're going in and out of a different environment every day, going to work, defending the utility grid, defending the financial grid, doing that, and knowing what those attacks are like as they step up and do their work as a reservist or a guardsman. This bill ensures that our men and women in uniform have the equipment they need to succeed, including looking at the growing capacity of our enemies. You know, we never want people who are defending us to be in a fair fight. We always want them to be in an unfair fight, and we want the advantage that can possibly be given to be on the side of those who defend our country and defend freedom. I'm glad that this bill projects some of the vital things that happen in our state. And of course, in your state, Mr. President, lots of things happen in Alaska as they do in Missouri. This bill further advances the need to replace the National Geospatial Facility in St. Louis, where 30+% of the people work that monitor our defense posture from the air, looking to see what's happening, when it's happening, how it's happening, fully redundant with the facility in Springfield, Virginia. If one of those doesn't work for whatever reason, the other one becomes the 100% provider of our geospatial activity that goes on all the time. There's a new hospital at Fort Leonard Wood in this bill. It's been the number one priority for number one medical priority for the Defense Department now for about a decade. This funds the first phase of that, the replacement of that facility. There's a National Guard training facility at Rosecrans in St. Joseph where our NATO allies go to learn. We had 19 countries in recent times have come and learned the lift capacity, how you use those C-130s in the most effective and efficient way. That's recognized in this bill, as is the AVCRAD, the Aviation Repair Facility in Springfield, Missouri, where a $32 million investment, a $34 million investment would return $62 million the first year, saving about $111 million at that facility every year now. But phase 3 in that facility would return $62 million the first year. I don't know that I've ever talked about a government investment before where you get all the money back in the first 6 months and a week or so. The bill also provides robust funding for A-10 maintenance. That A-10 reserve unit at Whiteman, where the Secretary of the Air Force just was, is the unit that if you're talking to troops on the ground, they'd always like the A-10 in the air supporting them on the ground. There's money here for Super Hornets to go on our aircraft carriers. It doesn't matter how many aircraft carriers you have if you don't have the planes to put on the aircraft carriers, and this bill recognizes that. Something that I've worked for some time, and I know you understand so well, Mr. President, the Military Family Stability Act is in this bill. Was in the Senate bill last year, was not able to be in the final bill, but it will be in the final bill that the House and Senate pass this year, I'm confident. The Secretary of Defense supports it, all the Joint Chiefs support it, and our House colleagues have supported it as well. This is an act, a bill that I filed with Senator Gillibrand about 3 years ago. This just simply provides more flexibility for our military families. The strength of the military is in the military family structure. And what this does is allow the family to either move early or stay longer at these assignments that normally are 2 to 3 year assignments. So lots can happen in 2 or 3 years, but not everything else just perfectly works out in 2 or 3 years. So for employment reasons or for education reasons, if a family decides it's their advantage to use the family support that the military provides, housing and other, and let the family stay another 2 months to finish school, or for a teaching contract to end, or some other spouse activity to come to a reasonable conclusion, or frankly, to do this the opposite, to go to the new assignment that you know you already have, but to do that just a little bit earlier so that it works better for the family to start school on time, to start a job on time that just has to start when that job has to start. As we have more dual career families in the military, this is one of the things we can do. And so that this allows up to 6 months for the person in the service to determine where they'd like their family benefit to be used, and then they become responsible for their own upkeep while they've either gone early or stayed late, but usually that's available at bachelor officers' quarters or available at barracks on the base. That because of that, there's no cost to the Defense Department here in doing the right thing. I want to thank Chairman McCain for the work he's done on this particular addition to the bill, Samantha Clark on his staff, who's worked hard to see that this could be not only workable but easily understood by the military, and their support's been important. Congressman Joe Wilson and Congresswoman Susan Davis were key to including these provisions in the House National Defense Authorization Act, and so families will see something, an opportunity here for them that they haven't seen in the past. This year's defense authorization takes the steps necessary to rebuild our military, but we still have work ahead of us. Sadly, this summer, we've lost more than 40 service members in accidents related to readiness challenges that are impacting the military. Sailors were killed aboard the USS Fitzgerald and the USS John S. McCain. Marines were killed after a C-130 aircraft crashed in Mississippi, and an MV-22 Osprey crashed off the coast of Australia. Soldiers have been lost in helicopter accidents in Hawaii and Yemen. Just last week, Mackenzie Eaglin of AEI wrote, "Troops are now more likely to die in peacetime incidents than active hostilities or combat." That is absolutely and totally unacceptable. Total casualties in Afghanistan, for example, in 2015 were 22, in 2016 were 14, in 2017 were 11, all respected and regrettable that those lives were lost. But in those same years, the Department of the Navy lost 28 people, 22 people, and this year, not even over yet, 43 people in accidents, and we cannot let this continue. We have asked the military to do too much with too little for too long, and this bill addresses that. So there are numerous threats to our nation. It's critical that we not waste any more time in working to resolve our budget issues, pass this legislation, come up with the appropriations that then support the authorizing bill, and go back to the number one priority of the federal government, Mr. President, which is to defend the country.